India finds itself in the midst of the worst economic crisis since 1991. How quickly can we reverse the situation? Who better than Dr. C. Rangarajan, the chairperson of the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council, to talk all about it? Dr. Rangarajan, many thanks for sparing time to talk to us on NDTV.
Thank you.
Dr. Rangarajan, you've just recently said that you expect India to clock between 5 to 5.5% growth this fiscal. At the same time, we've seen some downgrades on growth estimates coming from Nomura, HSBC, as well as Goldman Sachs that actually say India may only grow at a mere 4% this year. Are they overplaying the crisis, or is it that policymakers are underplaying it?
Well, we have done some exercise, and we do find that the Indian economy will do better than last year. We had a growth rate of 5% last year. There is no reason why we should not do as well as we did last year as far as the industrial and services sector is concerned. As far as agriculture is concerned, the monsoons have been extremely good, and the growth rate can be in the region of about 4 to 5%. In fact, some people tell me it could be even much higher than that. Whereas last year we had a growth rate of 1.7%. We should, at this particular point, think in terms of their growth rate anywhere between 5 and 5.5%.
So you don't agree with the 4%, the downgrades to the 4% levels?
I don't think so. I think that's highly pessimistic.
We've also had some rating agencies warning that India may face a rating downgrade to junk status. Do you again feel that some of those fears are misplaced?
Well, the rating agencies need to understand the problem in all its dimensions. We are unhappy and we are not satisfied with a growth rate of 5 to 6% or 5 to 5.5%. We have experienced in the past much higher growth rates, and therefore we would like to get back to a much higher growth. But in the world of today, even a growth rate of 5 to 5.5% is a very respectable rate of growth. Look at the BRICS countries. Except for China, all the other countries are growing at a much lesser rate. Therefore, the rating agencies, while looking at it, should look at what? Look at the growth, but growth not in isolation, but growth in relation to the other countries. Second, the rating agencies also look at fiscal consolidation.
Right.
Now, this is an important issue, but the finance minister has repeatedly said that the fiscal deficit will be maintained. So the rating agencies should look at these factors, and I think there is no case. I do not see there is any case for
a downgrade. All right, you mentioned that India is still showing respectable growth rate of 5 to 5.5%, which you're hoping India will clock this year compared to the rest of the world. At the same time, this is an economy that was talking of double-digit growth rates. Where did we go wrong? How did we slip so badly?
Well, in fact, the Indian recovery from the external shock of 2008 was rather swift and strong. And as late as 2010-11, the Indian economy was growing at 9.3%.
But what happened after that?
In fact, had we expected that high growth rate in 2010-11, we could have withdrawn some of the stimulus measures that we had introduced earlier.
Right.
And in fact, it is a continuance of those stimulus measures well beyond 2011 that has also landed us in some problem. It was expected as a result of the recession in these countries, international commodity prices will come down. This did not happen.
Right.
Until very recently there were some signs. The oil prices continue to remain high.
Right.
And that had an impact on our own domestic situation. And also the other thing, that whenever we talk about the balance of payment situation and the high level of trade deficit and the current account deficit, we also need to understand that there was an imbalance in terms of the growth rates of the advanced economies and our own growth rate.
Sure.
Since those economies were not growing fast enough, our exports were affected. But since we were growing at a much faster rate, our imports were not affected, but we were importing. That itself created a certain imbalance in the current account deficit. So that is one. The second, as I mentioned, the international price shocks had their own effect. Output of coal fell, output of iron ore fell, not only because of production considerations, but also because of certain court orders and court judgments and so on and so forth. Therefore, there was a shortfall in production of some of the critical inputs like coal, iron ore and all that, which also had the effect upon the economy. Thirdly, of course, the investment sentiment was affected. I mean, I think we cannot afford to forget the fact that investment sentiment...
Why do you think it was affected so badly? Some decisions taken...
It is affected by, if I may say so, both economic and non-economic factors.
Okay.
Economic factors were there, as I mentioned, about high level of oil prices and the non-availability of critical inputs and the shortage of power and so on and so forth. And also, I must say that certain issues like land acquisition and environment were very important and are important. But they became much more urgent and much more pressing during this period than I had seen before. And as a consequence, almost every project was getting delayed for one reason or the other.
So do you think environmental hurdles will be among the top factors that led India to slow down so badly?
No, I am only saying that there was a delay in the completion of projects.
Due to environmental.
These issues became much more urgent than before. Now, I am not saying that these issues are irrelevant or these issues are unnecessary. But we really need to strike a balance. We need to strike a balance between the compulsions of growth and the concerns for environment. And it is taking time. And I think we will resolve them, both in relation to land acquisition and environmental concerns.
In fact, a senior member of the opposition has blamed the earlier Environment Minister Jairam Rupee singularly for shaving off 2.5% from India's GDP. Do you agree with that kind of an analysis?
No, I think the attributing to any one particular minister or quantifying it, these are not appropriate.
Right.
Let me say this, that as I mentioned to you, that environment issues are so important. I mean, in the world of today, it has become so urgent. And we cannot afford to ignore them or push them under the carpet.
Right.
We have to address them. Therefore, these issues were not so urgent because our growth rate was just picking up. Now we have reached a point at which these conflicts need resolution.